I've always loved mornings in a restaurant. There's something special about the way an empty room gradually fills with life. The clinking of dishes, the hiss of the coffee machine, and the soft greetings of the staff. This Thursday, as usual, I was the first to arrive. 6:30 in the morning is a good time to start preparing for a new day at Ocean's Pearl. Turning on the lights in the kitchen, the first thing I did was check the preparations left by the evening shift. My predecessor as chef had taught me, read, never trust someone else's work without checking. That habit had stayed with me for the entire 12 years I'd worked here. I ran my finger over the metal surface of the cutting table. Not a speck of dust. At least I could be sure of the cleanliness. Good morning, Chief. Audrey always came in second, at 6:45 sharp. Her punctuality was as unfailing as a sea breeze in Malibu. I saw the notice on the door. Is today the interview with the new pastry chef? Yes, at 9. Liam insists we need a dessert specialist. Says a modern restaurant can't do without simple tiramisu and cheesecake. Audrey grinned, tying her apron. And I thought your cheesecake was a matter of national pride. You know Liam, if he gets something on his mind. I didn't finish the sentence, distracted by my phone. A text from Megan. Don't forget, Scarlett's parent-teacher conference at 6 today. Damn, totally slipped my mind. By 8 o'clock, the kitchen was buzzing like a beehive. The smell of freshly ground coffee mingled with the aroma of basil and rosemary that Pablo, our senior assistant, was chopping for the sauce. I loved this symphony of smells, sounds, and movement. Here in the kitchen, everything was clear and predictable, unlike life outside of it. Reed, we have a problem with the seafood supplier. Liam appeared out of the blue, as always in his perfectly pressed suit. Even this early, he looked like he was going to a presidential appointment. They raised the prices 30%. Again? We only agreed on the contract 2 months ago. They say there's a production problem. We'll either have to change the menu or raise prices. I sighed, wiping my hands with a towel. The last thing we needed right now was disgruntled customers. Ocean's Pearl was famous for seafood specifically. It was our calling card. Give me until tonight, I'll look at other vendors. At 9 sharp, she appeared at the door, Juliet Morgan. I knew immediately that this was our candidate for pastry chef. A confident look, a professional notebook in hand, and that special expression on the face of someone who knows exactly how to price herself. Her dark hair was gathered into a neat bun, and a small silver pendant in the shape of a whisk hung around her neck. The interview had gone smoothly. Juliet talked about desserts as passionately as I talked about my sauces. As she began to explain her concept for the dessert menu, I realized that it was the first time in a long time that I had met someone so passionate about her business. The day flew by. I had time to do inventory, schedule the next week, call 3 seafood suppliers, and go out twice to greet regular guests. At 5:50, I was already parking the car outside Scarlett's school. My little princess was waiting at the entrance, chatting with her friends. When she spotted me, she waved and said something quick to her buddies. Scarlett was a copy of her mother, the same expressive brown eyes, the same golden curls. Only she was mine, stubborn and straightforward. Dad, do you remember what Tuesday is? It was our tradition. On Tuesdays, I made tacos according to my grandmother's recipe. Of course, Princess. But first there's a parent-teacher conference. The meeting dragged on. Mrs. Benson, the classroom teacher, spoke at length about the upcoming school play and a fundraiser for new equipment for the music room. I caught myself thinking about work. I had to check the order for tomorrow and remember to look at the resume of another pastry chef candidate. Though after meeting Juliet, it seemed like a formality. At home, we were greeted by the aroma of jasmine tea, Megan's favorite drink. She was sitting in the living room watching some videos on her tablet. Probably another dance production. For the past few months, she'd been obsessed with putting on a new show based on Michael Jackson's Thriller. Mom, Dad promised tacos. Scarlett rushed off to change, and I leaned over to kiss my wife. How was your day? I asked, heading into the kitchen. Megan followed me, leaning against the door jamb. Fine, Reed. We need to talk. Something in her voice made me wary. In 14 years of marriage, I'd learned to recognize those notes when she wanted to say something important but wasn't sure of my reaction. Is something wrong? No. I mean, yes. I've been thinking a lot lately. About us. About our relationship. I pulled the stuffing out of the fridge, trying to remain calm. I've been thinking. Maybe we should try something new. Refresh our relationship. You want to go somewhere? We could make a weekend of it. No, Reed. I'm thinking about an open relationship. The onion I was holding slipped out and rolled across the table. I slowly turned to my wife. About what? About open relationships. It's when... I know what it is, Megan. My voice came out sharper than I wanted it to. Why? Are we in trouble? No, it's just... We've been together for so many years. Sometimes a relationship needs a fresh stream, you know? It doesn't mean we don't love each other. On the contrary, it can bring us closer. At that moment, Ashton, our 13-year-old son, flew into the kitchen, headphones around his neck and phone in hand. Dad, you promised you'd help with the Civil War report. Yeah, sure. I was almost grateful for the interruption. Megan, can we talk later? She nodded, but I noticed her shoulders tense. Something had changed. Something subtle but important. I went back to making tacos, mechanically chopping vegetables and running our conversation through my head. An open relationship? After 14 years of marriage? Over dinner, we talked about school, about Scarlett's new play, about Ashton's report. It was business as usual, but I felt like every word, every look, had a different weight now. Megan was unaccustomedly silent, only smiling absent-mindedly at the kids' jokes. Late that night, when the kids were already asleep, I stood at our bedroom window, looking out at the lights of Malibu. 14 years old, 2 kids, the house we'd chosen together. All this time, I thought I'd known my wife. Now, however, I wasn't sure of anything. Are you mad? Megan came up behind me, putting her arm around my waist. No, I just don't understand. We don't have to decide now. Just think about it, okay? I nodded, unable to utter a word. My mind was spinning with the thought of tomorrow. I need to meet with a new supplier, check orders, bring Juliet up to speed. Work had always been my salvation when things went wrong in my life. But now even the thought of the restaurant couldn't drown out the anxiety lodged somewhere deep inside. As I fell asleep, I remembered how Megan and I had met. She was just starting her career as a choreographer and often dined at Ocean's Pearl. I was the junior chef and always tried to cook something special for her. Who would have thought that after all these years, she would offer this? At 2 in the morning, I was still awake listening to my wife's steady breathing. Tomorrow, I needed to be at the restaurant by 6:30. Tomorrow was a new day. But somehow I was sure that nothing would ever be the same again. After that night, sleep became my enemy. I woke up every hour checking Megan's cell phone, which now she never left unattended. 3:30 in the morning, 4:20, 5:15. At 6, I gave up and drove to the restaurant earlier than usual. The cool air of early morning filled the empty streets of Malibu. As I parked outside Ocean's Pearl, I noticed my hands were shaking. I stood there for a few minutes, gripping the steering wheel and trying to collect my thoughts. The smell of freshly baked goods wafted from a nearby cafe, an appetizing smell that used to make me hungry, but now made me nauseous for some reason. In the kitchen, the first thing I did was check the preparations and start making the sauce for lunch. The familiar movements were soothing. Chop onions, fry them in olive oil, add spices. Everything as always, everything under control. At least here. Chief, are you okay? Audrey's voice snapped me out of my daze. Your sauce has been simmering for 10 minutes. Shit. I turned off the stove and set the pot aside. The sauce was certainly ruined. Reed, what's going on? You never ruin sauces. I looked around. No one in the kitchen but us yet. Audrey's known me for 12 years, been around when Ashton was born, helped organize Scarlett's birthday party last year. If there's anyone you can trust. Megan suggested an open relationship. Audrey froze with a knife in her hands. What? Says we need to freshen up the marriage, that it would bring us closer. And you said yes? Yeah, I don't know. We haven't finished talking. Audrey put the knife aside and sat down in the high chair by the desk. Reed, listen, I'm not a relationship expert, but at that moment, Juliet entered the kitchen, her first official day as sous chef pastry chef. Good morning. Oh, I'm sorry, is this a bad time? No, no, come in. I was almost glad for the interrupted conversation. Let me show you your workspace. The day dragged on endlessly. I'd oversalted the fish twice, forgotten about an important meeting with a supplier, and nearly sassed a customer who complained about the temperature of the soup. Luckily, Liam was busy with paperwork in the office and hadn't noticed my condition. My phone was silent, not a single message from Megan. She usually texted at least once a day asking about dinner or the kids. Maybe she didn't know what to say either? Or busy with… what? With who? Reed, look at this. Juliet handed me a plate of dessert. It's my version of your cheesecake, but with caramelized pears and thyme. I tasted it. The flavor was perfect. A familiar base, but with unexpected notes. Something new in the familiar. The thought made me uncomfortable again. Excellent. I tried to smile. I think the customers will like it. In the evening, I stayed up late going through the invoices. My phone showed 2 missed calls from Vivian, my mother-in-law. I didn't feel like calling back. From the first day we met, she'd made it clear that I wasn't good enough for her daughter. A simple cook. That's what she called me. As if she didn't notice that I was a longtime chef of a prestigious restaurant. I got home around 9 o'clock. The kids were already in their rooms. Ashton's probably in his headphones and Scarlett's drawing. She likes to draw before bed. Megan was in the living room, sitting with her laptop typing something quickly. When she noticed me, she slammed the lid shut. Sorry I'm late. I kissed her cheek. She smelled like an unfamiliar perfume. That's okay. Have you thought about our conversation? I sat down in the chair across from her. Megan, why now? What's changed? Nothing's changed. It's just, I feel like we're stuck, you know? Everything's so predictable, so… boring? That's not what I meant. What did you mean? Because I honestly don't understand. At that moment, Scarlett came down into the living room in her favorite unicorn pajamas. Dad, you promised to check my drawing. Of course, princess. I'll be right there. Megan rose from the couch. Talk to you later? I need to get my materials ready for class tomorrow. I watched her walk up the stairs. Had her gait changed? Or was it just me? I'd never wondered that before. Scarlett's drawing was beautiful. She'd drawn our Sunday picnic on the beach. Everyone smiling, holding hands. I felt my throat constrict. Do you like it, Dad? Very much, honey. You're a real artist. After putting my daughter to bed, I went down to the kitchen. There was a nearly full bottle of wine in the fridge. Megan usually drank it with her girlfriends on Fridays. I poured myself a glass, then another. My phone vibrated, a message from Audrey. How are you? Fine, I texted back. You're lying. Yeah. The house was quiet, only the clock on the wall ticking, a wedding gift from Megan's parents. For 14 years, they'd been counting down our marital bliss. What are they counting down now? I woke up this morning with a headache. Vivian was already in the kitchen, coming over to help with the kids. Her visits were always like a sudden natural disaster. Ah, Reed, she pursed her lips. Megan said you two had disagreements. Good morning, Vivian. I didn't know you were coming. Of course I didn't. You're always at your job. She was setting out plates of some kind of diet breakfast. Megan deserves attention, you know. A woman sometimes needs more than just stability. I silently poured myself a cup of coffee. Strong, no sugar. It was the only way to survive the interaction with my mother-in-law. Mom, you're here already. Megan came downstairs radiant and somehow different. Different. New blouse, new haircut. I thought you'd be here for lunch. Decided to get here early. Someone has to take care of my girl. Their gazes met some silent dialogue from which I was excluded. Megan had always been close to her mother, but right now that closeness was scary for some reason. At work, the first thing I did was ruin a batch of gravy. Again. Why don't you tell me? Juliet set a cup of coffee in front of me. Sometimes it helps to talk it out. I shook my head. Just family stuff. I see, she smiled. You know, when I was in culinary school, a teacher used to say, if you can't fix a situation, create a new one. Why don't we try coming up with a new menu? It'll take your mind off things. All day, we worked on new recipes. Juliet turned out to be not only a talented pastry chef, but also a great listener. She didn't ask questions. She was just there for me, and that made it easier. On my way home that evening, I noticed an unfamiliar car in front of my house. Expensive, black, tinted windows. When I parked, it was gone. Coincidence? In the bedroom, Megan was on the phone. When she saw me, she said goodbye quickly. Who was that? Just work. She turned away, pulling a towel out of the closet. I'm taking a shower. I stared at the closed bathroom door. The water was running for an unaccustomedly long time. Or did it just seem that way to me? I'd never counted the minutes Megan spent in the shower before. I'd never noticed much at all before. Her cell phone vibrated on the nightstand. I never checked her messages. Trust was the foundation of our relationship. Was it? Was it? The screen went blank, but the anxiety remained. It grew with every day, with every strange look, with every unspoken word. Something was happening in my perfect life, something irreversible. And I didn't know if I was ready to find out what it was. I began to notice little things changing. Megan used to drink coffee in the mornings from her favorite blue mug, a gift for our 5th anniversary. Now that mug was gathering dust in the cupboard, and she was using a new one with some fancy pattern. A gift from the studio, she said in a glimpse. Strange. She had always talked about gifts in detail before, enthusiastically sharing the story of every little thing. That morning, I woke up to the sound of her footsteps. She was getting ready to go somewhere at 6:30. Early rehearsal? I asked, propping myself up on my elbow. Yes. Need to get the hall ready for the new show. She was wearing a new dress, navy blue, tight-fitting. I'd never seen it before. She had put on makeup, not just mascara and lipstick, but full makeup. For a rehearsal in an empty auditorium? Why don't we have breakfast together? Sorry, I'm late. By the way, Mom offered to pick up the kids from school and spend the evening with them. You have a full shift today, don't you? Vivian was now showing up at our house almost every day, preparing her diet breakfasts, giving Megan some whispered advice, looking at me with poorly concealed disapproval. At the restaurant, I immersed myself in my work. The new menu with Juliet distracted me from my heavy thoughts. She had suggested an interesting idea, combining classic French desserts with local California ingredients. Look, she showed me a serving sketch. Lavender creme brulee with fig jam and almond crumble. Her enthusiasm was infectious. For the first time in days, I felt something resembling joy. Reed, Audrey caught me by the refrigerator. Have you talked to her? About that proposal? I shook my head. She's avoiding the subject. Busy all the time now. Rehearsals, meetings, planning the show. Wasn't she busy before? That question caught me off guard. Indeed, Megan used to have rehearsals and meetings too, but she always made time for her family. What had changed? I stayed late at the restaurant that evening. I had to make reservations for next week. My phone was silent, no messages from my wife. She used to write if I was late. She'd ask when I'd be home, tell me how the kids were doing. Still working? Juliet came out of the pastry shop, wiping her hands. Need help with an order? Thanks, but it takes a lot of concentration. You know, when I got divorced, work was my salvation. She said it mundanely, putting her tools in their places. But sometimes it's good to just go home and face reality head on. I looked at her more closely. You were married? 3 years. He's a chef too. Works in Vegas now, she smiled. Life goes on, Reed, no matter what happens. The house was unaccustomedly quiet. The kids were still at Vivian's. The light was on in the living room. But Megan wasn't there. There was an open book on the coffee table. Some kind of love novel. Megan never read books like that. I went upstairs, walked past the kids' rooms. Our bedroom was empty, the sound of water coming from the bathroom. Megan came out 15 minutes later, wrapped in a towel, smelling of unfamiliar shampoo. Oh, you're home already. She walked past me to the closet. How was work? Fine. Where are the kids? At my mom's, I told you this morning. She offered to keep them overnight. Tomorrow's Saturday, we can take our time getting to school. We used to always discuss such decisions together. Before... Megan, we need to talk. About what? She pulled on a t-shirt. A new one, too, with some writing in English on it. About that proposal of yours. About an open relationship. She froze for a second, then continued brushing her hair. And what did you decide? What about you? Is that really what you want? I want us to be happy, Reed. Isn't that what you want? We were happy. Were. She said it so quietly I could barely hear it. At that moment, her cell phone rang. She grabbed it too quickly, walking out of the room. I heard her go down the stairs, the door to the backyard open and close. Who is she talking to this late? About what? I lay in bed trying to read the new cooking magazine. The lines blurred before my eyes. Scraps of thoughts swirled around in my head. New dress, unfamiliar shampoo, strange phone calls. Megan returned a half hour later. Sorry, important work call. 11 p.m.? Yeah, we're putting together a big show. You know how it is. Do I? She used to always talk about her productions, show me videos of rehearsals, advise me on music. Now I didn't even know what kind of show they were putting together. Should I come watch a rehearsal? I haven't seen you work in a while. She tensed, barely noticeable, but I caught the change. It's all very raw right now. When I have something to show you, I'll be sure to invite you. At night, I couldn't sleep. The house seemed strangely empty without the kids. Megan lay next to me, but it was as if a wall had grown between us. We'd often fallen asleep snuggled together before. Now she kept to her side of the bed. My phone vibrated. A message from Juliet. Made a new recipe. I'll show you tomorrow. Attached to the message was a picture of some kind of dessert. I smiled. Her enthusiasm reminded me of myself at the beginning of my career. In the morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Megan was gone. The note on the kitchen table said she'd gone to her mother's house to pick up the kids after lunch. I made coffee, looked out the window. Her car was gone. Where had she gone at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning? The restaurant was unusually quiet. Weekends always started later than weekdays. I was checking orders when Juliet came in. I'm sorry it's so early, she set a box on the table. But I really wanted to show you this dessert. Inside was a perfectly shaped apple tatin with caramel sauce and a sprig of rosemary. Try it, she held out a fork to me. The flavor was amazing, sweet but not cloying, with the slight sourness of the apples and an unexpected note of rosemary. This is great, she brightened. Really, I think it could be a hit on the fall menu. We spent the entire morning discussing new menu ideas. Juliet was easy to work with. She understood the kitchen. She understood the flavors. She understood me. The phone rang around 2 o'clock. Vivian. Reed, can you pick up the kids? Megan's running late for rehearsal. Sure, I'll be there in half an hour. Juliet looked at me carefully. Is everything okay? Yeah, just family stuff. You know, sometimes the hardest part is admitting that something isn't okay. I remained silent. What could I say? That my wife had changed? That I don't recognize the man I've lived with for 14 years? That I was afraid to find out the truth? On the way to Vivian's house, I saw a familiar car, the same black car with tinted windows. It was traveling in the opposite direction. It was driven by a man, but I didn't get a good look at him. Vivian greeted me with poorly concealed irritation. The kids are getting ready. Megan called, said she'd be late. What rehearsal on Saturday? Don't ask stupid questions, Reed. You know how important her career is to her. Do I? Before, it seemed like I did. Now I wasn't sure I knew anything for sure. I hardly slept at all, lying there listening to the silence of the house, waiting for Megan to return. She came in at 2 in the morning. She smelled like wine. Celebrating a successful rehearsal, she said without looking me in the eye. At 6:30 in the morning, I could no longer stay in bed. I went down to the kitchen and mechanically pulled out coffee beans, the same ones we always bought at the little shop on the corner. Now that familiar aroma was only bitter. Sunday morning, we used to always have breakfast together. I made French toast, Megan made fruit salad. The kids argued about who would be the first to tell their dreams. The coffee grinder hummed too loudly in the morning silence. I cringed. My head was splitting. The only things in the medicine cabinet were baby vitamins and bandages. The painkillers had run out, and I'd forgotten to buy new ones. Like so many other things lately. Dad, What are you doing up so early? Ashton appeared in the kitchen, disheveled, wearing his favorite superhero t-shirt, 13 years old and still sleeping in it. Decided to make a special breakfast, I tried to smile. Want to help? He nodded, climbing into a high chair at the kitchen counter. We used to cook together a lot. I'd taught him basic techniques, talked about spices, explained why it was important to chop vegetables properly. Now those moments were becoming rarer and rarer. Dad, why is Mom coming home so late? The question sounded like a blow. What could I say? That his mother might be seeing another man? That our marriage was crumbling like a house of cards? She's got a lot of work to do, son. A new play. Uh-huh. He stared at his phone. Why is Grandma here all the time now? I almost cut myself slicing bread for toast. Really, why? To keep an eye on me? To cover for Megan? The day stretched on endlessly. Megan slept until 11, then took a long bath. She came down to the kitchen already wearing makeup and a new silk robe. I need to go to the studio, she said, barely touching her breakfast. To check on some records. On Sunday? Art knows no days off. She smiled that new foreign smile she'd been sporting lately. I watched her get into the car. New haircut, new clothes, new perfume. When had it started? How could I not have noticed? Dad, are we going to the movies tonight? Scarlett tugged on my sleeve. Damn, I'd completely forgotten. I'd promised to take her to the new cartoon. Sure, princess. Get ready. At the theater, I couldn't concentrate on the movie. I kept checking my phone. Not a single text from Megan. She used to always text when we were with the kids, asking how they liked the movie, asking to buy popcorn, wondering what time we'd be back. After the movie, we went to the mall. I bought ice cream for the kids and a new bottle of painkillers for myself. I froze at the jewelry store window. There was a necklace that looked like the one I'd given Megan for our 10th anniversary. She hadn't worn it in months. Reed? What a surprise. I turned around. Standing in front of me was a tall man in an expensive suit. Perfect haircut, expensive watch, confident smile. Braxton Ramirez. He held out his hand. We met at a fundraiser last year. I own a chain of dance studios. Of course I remembered him. Megan had marveled at his projects all evening then. How's Megan? She's making amazing progress. His smile grew wider. Her new production promises to be a sensation. Something in his tone, in his gaze, made me tense. Was he talking about my wife in such an intimate? Dad, can we look at the toys? Scarlett saved me from having to answer. Sure, honey. I'm sorry, Mr. Ramirez. Braxton, please. Say hi to Megan. I watched him walk away, a confident gait. His car reflected in the window, black with tinted windows. The same one. We got home by 6. Megan was still gone, but Vivian was there, setting up her diet salads on the table. Ah, you're finally back, she pursed her lips. Megan called, told me to tell you she'd be late. Important meeting. Sunday night? Don't get me started, Reed. You know what an important time in her career this is. Do I know? Do I know anything at all? That evening, after putting the kids to bed, I sat in my office, the small room where I kept the cookbooks and restaurant awards. I tried to make a plan for the next week, but the letters blurred before my eyes. The phone vibrated, a message from Juliet. I'm bringing a new dessert tomorrow. I think you'll like it. I smiled, for the first time all day. Everything was simple and straightforward with her. No misunderstandings, no strange looks, no... The door slammed downstairs. Megan was back. I heard her talking on the phone, quietly, almost a whisper. I went down to the kitchen. She quickly ended the conversation. Oh, you're awake. She looked tired, but her eyes sparkled. I'm sorry it's so late. We're cooking something special. I met Braxton Ramirez today. She froze for a split second. Or was it just me? You did? Where? At the mall. Talked about your new play. Oh yeah, he helps the studio a lot. She walked past me to the refrigerator, pulling out a bottle of water. Was her hand shaking a little? Megan, I'm really tired, Reed. How about tomorrow? I watched her walk up the stairs. The gait had changed, more confident, more feminine? When had it started? How could I not have noticed? In bed, I lay awake, listening to her breathing. It had soothed me before, but now every breath was painful. Her phone vibrated softly. She checked the message, thinking I was asleep. She smiled in the dark. In the morning, I left for the restaurant earlier than usual. I couldn't be at home, where every detail screamed change. New candles in the living room. She never liked candles. New pillows on the couch, new pictures on the walls. Where were the old ones? The ones of all of us together? "You look awful," Audrey greeted me in the kitchen. "No sleep at all?" I shook my head, picking up my knife. Work had always saved me, but right now even the familiar motions didn't bring comfort. "You know," Audrey put a hand on my shoulder, "sometimes it's better to know the truth, no matter how bitter it is." The truth? I already knew it. I was just afraid to admit it, afraid to say it out loud, afraid to... "Good morning." Juliet entered the kitchen with a box in her hands. "I brought that dessert I wrote about." I looked at her, a bright smile, a sincere look, no secrets, no innuendos. Why couldn't life be as simple and straightforward as the recipe for a new dessert? The phone in my pocket vibrated again. A message from Vivian. "We need to talk, today." The meeting with Vivian was scheduled at her favorite coffee shop, a swanky establishment in downtown Malibu that served only organic coffee at exorbitant prices. I arrived early, ordered a sugar-free Americano. My head throbbed with sleep the third night in a row. I'd woken up every hour, listening to Megan's breathing, to the sound of her phone, to her footsteps around the house. Vivian showed up at exactly the right time, an impeccable sand-colored suit, a pearl necklace, a fresh manicure. Sitting across from me, she wrinkled her nose at the sight of my cup. "I always told Megan you weren't sophisticated enough." "Sophisticated," she signaled to the waiter. "Latte with almond milk and a dash of vanilla syrup, please." I remained silent, waiting for her to continue. In 14 years, I'd gotten used to her barbs, her constant hints that her daughter deserved better. "Reed, you do realize what's going on, don't you?" "Enlighten me." She pressed her lips together. "Don't pretend you don't notice. Megan, she's changed, blossomed. You should be grateful that she even offered the option of an open relationship rather than..." "Not what?" My voice sounded hoarse. "Didn't go straight to him?" Vivian was silent for a moment, scrutinizing her manicure. "I don't know what you mean." "About Braxton Ramirez, about his black car outside our house, about late rehearsals and new perfume." "Oh, that's it." She sipped her latte. "You know, Reed, sometimes a woman needs more than just stability. Megan deserves a man who understands art, who can give her..." "What? Money? Status?" "Don't be vulgar. I'm talking about understanding, about shared interests, about..." The phone vibrated. A message from Audrey. "Where are you? We have a problem with a supplier." I'd never been so happy about a work issue. "Excuse me, Vivian. I'm expected at the restaurant." "Of course." She smiled, the same indulgent smile she had 14 years ago when I first came to their house. "Run to your pots and pans. That's why Megan and..." I didn't bother to listen to the end of the sentence. Leaping out of the coffee shop, I got in my car. My hands were shaking so badly that I couldn't immediately put the key in the ignition. The restaurant was in its usual morning bustle. Audrey had solved the problem with the vendor herself. She always knew how to handle crises. Seeing my condition, she silently held out a glass of water. "Talk to your mother-in-law?" I nodded, unable to utter a word. "I?" She pretty much confirmed it. "Reed..." Audrey was about to add something, but at that moment Juliet walked into the kitchen with a huge box of strawberries. "Look what they brought. I think we can make an amazing dessert with basil and..." She stopped short when she saw our faces. "Is something wrong?" I shook my head, trying to pull myself together. "No, it's fine. Tell me about dessert." The day passed like a blur. I'd oversalted the sauce twice, forgotten about an important meeting with the wine sommelier, and almost started a fire by leaving the pan on the fire. Liam looked concerned, but he didn't ask questions. He'd learned to trust me over the years. In the evening, when the main flow of visitors had subsided, I sat in my office poring over the invoices. The numbers blurred before my eyes. Vivian's words, intonations, innuendos were spinning in my head. "May I?" Juliet stood in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee. "Come in." She placed a cup in front of me. "You know, when my marriage was falling apart, I couldn't concentrate on work either. Everything was falling apart. It's noticeable, isn't it? Only to those who know what pain looks like." She sat down across from me. "Do you want to talk?" I looked at her. An open face, a sincere look. No games, no innuendo. "My wife. I think she's having an affair." "No, she doesn't. I know that." "And that's why she suggested an open relationship?" "Yes, to legalize it. To pretend it was okay." Juliet was silent, giving me a chance to speak. "I can't remember when it started, when she changed, when she stopped being the Megan I knew." "Maybe she's always been like that? You just saw what you wanted to see?" The thought was unexpected. And really, hadn't there been signs before? Her flirting with clients, her admiration for successful men, her constant talk about how important it was to grow above yourself. Her phone vibrated. A message from Megan. "I'll be late. Don't wait up." She's not even making excuses. I showed the phone to Juliet. She just doesn't think she needs to. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. We have kids. Ashton and Scarlett, they don't deserve this." "And you? Do you deserve to live a lie?" I didn't answer. Outside the window, dusk was thickening, and quiet music was playing in the restaurant. Some jazz, Liam's favorite style. Megan and I used to love jazz too. Used to go to concerts a lot. When did it stop? It was dark and quiet at home. The kids were already asleep. Vivian had helped with them again. On the kitchen table, a note. "Ashton got an A in history. Scarlett needs new sneakers for the dance." I went upstairs, peeking into the kids' rooms. Ashton was sleeping snuggled up with a pillow, just like when he was a baby. Scarlett had her drawings all over the bed. She liked to fall asleep looking at them. The door slammed downstairs. Light footsteps on the stairs, the rustle of clothes, the smell of unfamiliar perfume. "Are you awake?" Megan peeked into the bedroom. "Sorry, an important meeting ran late." "With Braxton?" She froze on the threshold. "What? Your important meeting? Was it with Braxton Ramirez?" "Reed, you..." "Just answer me. Tell the truth for once." She walked into the room, sat down on the dressing table, away from me. "Yes, I was with him." I expected that answer, but I still felt something shiver inside. "How long ago?" "Reed, how long ago did it start, Megan?" She turned back to the mirror, started taking off her earrings, new ones I hadn't seen before. "What difference does it make?" I offered a solution. "An open relationship is the civilized way to..." "The civilized way to what?" "To justify cheating." "Don't dramatize." That word, "don't dramatize," was like a slap in the face. I stood up, walked to the window. There was a light on in the house next door. An elderly couple lived there, and they often sat on the porch in the evenings, holding hands, just like Megan and I used to. "You know," I didn't recognize my voice. "I kept thinking, when did it start? When did you change? And now I realize, maybe you've always been like this? Maybe I'm the one who made up another Megan." "What do you mean?" "About how the real Megan never loved a simple cook. She needed someone more status, like Braxton." She jumped up. "That's not fair. I loved you, Reed. It's just people change, grow, develop." "And I haven't grown? Not evolved?" "You're stuck, Reed. In your restaurant, in your recipes. You don't even notice the world changing around you." I looked at her. Beautiful, confident, foreign. Where was the girl who cried tears of happiness when I proposed to her? Who said she was proud of me when I got the chef job? Who? "Mom's right." Megan walked over to the closet, pulling out a nightgown. "You don't understand art. You don't understand that a person needs to evolve, to strive for more." "Does Braxton understand?" Yes, he does. He sees me not just as a wife and mother, but as a person, an artist." At that moment, the door creaked open. Ashton stood on the doorstep in his superhero t-shirt. "Mom? Dad? What's going on?" Megan stumbled back, going pale. "Nothing, sweetie. The adults are just talking. Go to bed." I watched my son walk away, slouched, confused. What did he hear? What did he realize? "We woke the kids up." Megan said reproachfully, as if I was to blame for this conversation, for her cheating, for everything. Yes, we woke them up. How did you plan to explain your open relationship to them? Or is that also part of their development? She didn't answer, walking off to the bathroom. I could hear the water running noisily, her humming something, probably a tune from the new production, the one with Braxton. I went down to the kitchen and pulled out a bottle of whiskey, a gift from Liam last Christmas. I poured it, but I didn't drink it. I sat there, staring at the amber liquid and thinking about how strange life was. You think you know someone, you build a life with them, raise children with them, and then it turns out that all this time they were, who? An actress in a play called Family Life. The phone vibrated, a message from Juliet. I hope you're okay. I'll bring a new recipe tomorrow. I think you'll like it. I smiled, for the first time that evening. At least things were clear and honest at work. At least there I didn't have to pretend. After that night, the house was no longer a home. It became a theater where everyone played their part, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. Megan left early, came back late. I made breakfast, checked my homework, smiled at the kids, all the usual. Only now every move, every word was difficult. That morning started the same as always. Dad, my backpack ripped. Ashton pointed to the split seam. His voice sounded tentative. After that night's conversation, he'd been more cautious, as if he was afraid of frightening the delicate balance in the house. Let's take a look. I picked up my backpack, trying to focus on a simple task. A thread, a needle, neat stitches. Something at least I could fix. Scarlett came down last, unaccustomed to being quiet. She'd always been our little chatterbox. But now she painted more often than she talked. Her latest drawings were dark, black trees, gray skies, lonely figures. Honey, what do you want for breakfast? Never mind, she shrugged, not lifting her eyes from another drawing. At that moment, Megan walked into the kitchen, already wearing makeup and a new dress the color of burgundy wine. I could smell her perfume, a tart, grown-up scent, not at all like the delicate floral notes she used to love. I'm not having breakfast today. She poured herself coffee into a thermos mug. Important meeting. With Braxton? The words came out on their own. She froze, turning around slowly. The kids are here, Reed. Yes, the kids are here. Your children, Megan. Remember them? Ashton jumped up from the table. I'll go get my textbooks together. Scarlett followed her brother, leaving an unfinished drawing, a black silhouette of a woman walking off into the distance. Don't do this, Megan spoke softly, but there was steel ringing in her voice. Don't use the children. Me? I'm the one using them? You don't understand. No, you're the one who doesn't understand. I threw the towel on the table. You're destroying your family for what? For personal growth? For the sake of... Good morning, family! Vivian burst into the kitchen, impeccable as always in her expensive suit. Oh, is this a bad time? Very timely, Mom. Megan grabbed her bag. Make sure the kids have a proper breakfast. I have a meeting. I watched her walk away, straight back, confident gait. When did she learn to walk like that? When did she become so foreign? Reed, you're only making things worse. Vivian began spreading out her diet breads on the table. If you'd just accept Megan's offer, an offer to cheat on each other? Ugh, how vulgar. An open relationship is the civilized way to... Stop it. I felt myself gasp. At the restaurant, I showed up earlier than usual. The kitchen greeted me with familiar smells. Rosemary, basil, freshly ground pepper. Everything was clear here, everything obeyed the rules. Chop, mix, bring to a boil. Chef, are you okay? Audrey looked concerned. Your hands are shaking. I lowered my gaze. Indeed, the knife in my hand was walking around. I'm fine, it's just... complicated morning. Reed, she took the knife from me. You can't go on like this. Talk to her. Have a real talk. About what? About her sleeping with another man? About the fact that my wife... Good morning. Juliet entered the kitchen carrying a box of fresh berries. She faltered when she saw our faces. Is this a bad time? No, it's It's fine. I tried to smile. What do you have in there? Fresh blackberries. I think we could make an amazing dessert with lavender cream. Her enthusiasm was contagious. For a few hours, I was immersed in work, new recipes, orders, meetings with suppliers. But my thoughts kept returning to the morning conversation, to the eyes of the children, to the smell of someone else's perfume. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A message from Megan. We need to talk. Tonight. Talk. About what? About how our 14-year marriage was a mistake? That she needs someone more suitable? Reed? Juliet touched my shoulder. Is everything okay? No, I shook my head. Nothing's okay. She silently handed me a cup of tea, not coffee, as usual, but some sort of herbal concoction. You know, sometimes you just need to exhale and face reality head on. I got home late that evening, purposely staying late at the restaurant, going over invoices, checking inventory, doing everything I could to delay the inevitable. The house greeted me with an unaccustomed silence. No music from Ashton's room, no rustling of Scarlett's pencils. The kids are at Mom's. Megan sat in the living room, straight as a string. I thought we should talk without witnesses. Without witnesses? Like we committed a crime? Stop being dramatic. She wrinkled her nose. I just want to talk calmly. I sat down in the chair across the hall, the same one where I usually read stories to the kids. How many evenings had we spent here together? How many conversations, laughter, plans for the future? You're right, my voice sounded hoarse. Let's talk. How long have you been dating Braxton? She didn't look away, and it was almost more painful than the words themselves. 8 months. 8. And all that time. I didn't want to hurt you, she said calmly, as if she were discussing the dinner menu. That's why I suggested an open relationship. It's the civilized way to... Stop it! I jumped up. Stop saying that word. What's civilized about it? In the fact that you lied? In the fact that you're destroying a family? I'm not destroying anyone. She stood up too. I just grew out of that relationship. You've stayed the same, with your recipes, with your little world. Small world. You call our family a small world? Reed, she sighed. Understand. There's another life. More opportunities, more money, more status. Yes! She finally raised her voice. Yes, more money, more opportunities. What's wrong with that? Why should I settle for... Me, our life, the children? Leave the children out of this. She spoke calmly again. I'm a wonderful mother. Really? Did you ask Scarlett why she only paints in black? Did you see the way Ashton stopped smiling? She turned back to the window. They'll understand. Someday they'll realize that sometimes you have to make choices. A choice between family and a lover? Between stagnation and development. We stood opposite each other, strangers in a familiar room. Somewhere a clock was ticking, a wedding gift from her parents. For 14 years it had been counting down our time. Now it was counting down the end. You know, I felt strangely calm. I kept thinking, when did it start? When did you stop being the Megan I knew? And now I realize, maybe that Megan never existed. Don't be silly. Of course I loved you. It's just found someone more suitable, more civilized. She didn't answer. Pulled out her phone, quickly texted someone. Braxton? Vivian? What did it matter now? I'm moving in with my mom. She said it casually. Just for a while until we can work things out in a civilized. There was that word again. I watched her go upstairs, probably to pack her things. I wondered how many of them were already waiting at Vivian's house. How long had she been planning this civilized departure? The phone in my pocket vibrated, a message from Juliet. How are you? I didn't answer. Just stood in the middle of the living room, listening to drawers opening and closing upstairs, things rustling, my life falling apart, quietly, carefully, civilized. The first morning without Megan began with silence. No sound of water running in the bathroom, no clacking of heels on the stairs, no jingling of her bracelets, just the ticking of the clock on the wall, methodical, merciless, counting down the seconds of the new reality. Ashton came down to breakfast unusually early. He sat at his desk, staring at his phone, his shield from reality. I noticed he was wearing an old superhero t-shirt, the same one Megan wanted to throw away, deeming it too childish for a 13-year-old. "What are you having for breakfast, son?" "Never mind." He didn't look up from the screen. "Dad, is Mom really going to live at Grandma's now?" I froze at the stove where I was making French toast, his favorite. How do you explain things to a child that you don't understand yourself? For now, she needs to think. About what? About that uncle she's dating? "I'm sorry, Dad." Ashton finally pulled away from the phone. "I shouldn't have." "No, son. You have a right to ask. You have a right to know." "I saw them," he said quietly, looking down at the table. "At the mall, a month ago. They didn't notice me. She was laughing, like she used to with you." I sank down in my chair, feeling my fingers go numb. A month ago? My son had lived with that knowledge for a month? "Ashton, Don't, Dad." He stood up. "I don't want to talk about it. Can I eat in my room?" Scarlett showed up 10 minutes later. "Daddy, can I not go to the dance studio today?" I froze. Dancing had been her passion since she was 5, just like her mother's. "Why, Princess?" There. Everyone's talking about Mom and about Uncle Braxton. She didn't finish, but I could see the tears in her eyes. My little girl who was always so proud that her mom was a famous choreographer. "Of course you can. Do you want to draw together tonight?" She nodded, clutching the sketchbook to her chest. It was always with her now, like a lifeline. I showed up at the restaurant earlier than usual. The kitchen greeted me with familiar smells: basil, rosemary, freshly ground coffee. Nothing had changed here. There was still order here. "Reed?" Audrey put a hand on my shoulder. "How are you?" "She's gone, to her mother's, the kids." "I know. Liam called, said for you to take the day off." "No." I shook my head. "I need to work. Need to do something. To do." I plunged into work, checking orders, preparing sauces, instructing the staff. But my hands moved mechanically, and my son's words rolled around in my head. "She laughed, like she used to with you." "Good morning." Juliet appeared in the kitchen with her usual energy. "I came up with a new dessert, pear tart with rosemary, and—" She paused when she saw my face. "What's wrong?" "Megan left. Last night." Juliet set down her boxes in silence, took off her coat. "Do you want to talk?" "No. I want to work." She nodded, understanding. She took the pears out of the box and began peeling them, methodically, carefully. I watched her hands, confident movements, no fuss, no pretense. My phone vibrated. A message from Vivian. "Megan wants to take the kids for the weekend." I didn't answer. What could I say? That our daughter was afraid to go to the dance studio? That our son had been carrying the weight of someone else's secret for a month? "Reed." Liam appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Come in my office, please." His office smelled like leather and expensive coffee. He poured me a cup and added whiskey, against all the rules, but it was just what I needed right now. "I know what's going on." He sat down across from me. "And I know you don't want to talk about it, but you should know. The restaurant will always be your safe haven." I nodded, unable to utter a word. "One more thing." He pulled an envelope out of a drawer. "Remember that chef competition in San Francisco? I sent in your entry." "Liam, I can't right now." "It's exactly now that you have to. This is your chance to show, to her, to yourself, to everyone, who you are." I walked back into the kitchen where Juliet was working on her tart. The smell of caramelized pears and rosemary filled the room, an unusual combination, like herself. "Try some." She held out a spoon to me. "What do you think?" The flavor was perfect. Sweet, but not cloying, with notes of pine and caramel. Honest flavor, without pretense or acting. The phone vibrated again, now Megan's. "We need to discuss the kids' schedules." Schedule, as if it were a business meeting, not the lives of two little people whose world had just been shattered. I got home late that evening. The house smelled of unfamiliar perfume. Vivian had come to pick up some of Megan's things. On the table was a note in her handwriting. Call me when you're ready to discuss things in a civilized manner. There was that word again. I crumpled up the note, tossed it in the trash. I went upstairs to check on the kids. Ashton was sitting at his computer, headphones on, his way of hiding from reality. Scarlett was drawing, no longer in black, but in blue. Progress? Dad, she looked up from her sketchbook. Is it true that love can end? I sat down next to her on the bed, looking at the drawing two silhouettes diverging in different directions. Sometimes people change, Princess, and so do their feelings. And yours? Have your feelings changed? I put my arms around her, feeling her shoulders shake. No, sweetheart. My love for you and Ashton will never change. And for your mom? I didn't answer. What could I say? That I still loved the woman who betrayed us? That I hated her for the pain she'd caused the kids? That. The phone vibrated. A message from Juliet. I'll bring a new recipe tomorrow. I think you'll like it. I smiled. For the first time all day. At least things were simple and straightforward at work. At least there I didn't have to pretend. At night I lay awake for a long time, listening to the silence of the house. I used to be able to hear Megan humming in the bathroom, the pages of the book she was reading before bed. Now there was only silence, and the ticking of the clock on the wall, counting down the seconds of a new life. The phone vibrated. Megan. I'll come by tomorrow to pick up the rest of my stuff. I hope you'll behave reasonably. Reasonable. Civilized. As if there was a reasonable way to break up a family, a civilized way to betray trust. I turned my phone off. Tomorrow would be a new day. Tomorrow is about being strong. For the kids, for myself, for the life that can still be. No pretense, no playing games, no open relationships. The morning began with the smell of Megan's perfume. She came to pick up her things while I got the kids ready for school. Her presence in the house felt physical, like a pressure on my temples, like a heaviness in my chest. I could hear her walking around upstairs, opening closets, pulling out drawers, methodically erasing the traces of 14 years together. Dad, I don't want to go to school. Ashton looked down at his bowl of cereal without looking up. He hardly slept at night. I could hear him pacing around the room, turning the computer on and off. Why, son? Everyone knows. About Mom and him. Jason from parallel class saw them at the restaurant. I squeezed the edge of the tabletop. Of course everyone knows. Malibu is a small town. Gossip spreads faster than wildfire. Ashton, listen. Good morning. Megan appeared in the kitchen, carrying a box of something. She smelled like a new perfume. Tart. Grown up. Kids, Mom's picking you up after school today, okay? We'll spend the evening together. Scarlett, who had been silently doodling something in her sketchbook until then, flinched. What about Daddy? Daddy has to work, honey. Megan smiled that new foreign smile. We'll go to Grandma's and she'll make your favorite vegetarian cutlets. I hate vegetarian cutlets. Ashton stood up from the table. And I'm not going. I have practice. Since when do you go to practice on Tuesdays? Since you stopped being interested in our lives. He grabbed his backpack and ran out of the kitchen. The front door slammed. Megan turned pale. Are you turning them against me? No. I started picking up dishes from the table to keep my hands busy with something. They just see. See what? The truth, Megan. They see the truth. She set the box on the table, abruptly, angrily. I'm still their mother, and I have the right to... The right to what? The right to destroy their world for the sake of your personal growth? Don't start. She pulled out her phone, quickly texting someone. I'll pick up my stuff tonight. I hope you'll behave. Reasonable. At the restaurant, I immersed myself in work, the only thing still keeping me afloat. Checking orders, preparing sauces, instructing the staff. But my hands were moving mechanically, and my son's words, ever since you stopped taking an interest in our lives, rolled around in my head. Read. Liam appeared in the kitchen with some papers. Have you thought about the competition in San Francisco? Now's not a good time. Now is a good time. He placed the papers in front of me. You need something of your own. something that belongs only to you. I own a restaurant. The restaurant is my brainchild. And this, he tapped his finger on the papers, could be yours. I looked at the application, a prestigious competition, a chance to show my skills, a chance at something new. Good morning. Juliet entered the kitchen, carrying a basket of fruit. Is something wrong? Megan's picking up her things. I didn't know why I'd said that to her myself. And the kids. For tonight. Juliet set the basket down, took off her coat. You know, when my marriage was falling apart, the hardest thing was to accepting the change, accepting that life would never be the same again. And how did you cope? I started over, in my own way. I watched her take out the peaches, arrange them on the table, each movement precise, confident. No pretense, no games. My phone vibrated, a message from Vivian. I hope you won't keep Megan from getting her things. She's suffered enough. Suffering. I felt anger boiling over. What about the children's suffering? What about Ashton, who's afraid to go to school? What about Scarlett, who only paints in dark colors? Reed, Audrey touched my shoulder. Why don't you take the day off? Be with the kids? No, I shook my head. I need to work. Need to move on. The day dragged on endlessly. I'd oversalted the sauce 3 times, forgotten an important meeting with a supplier, and nearly burned a batch of steaks. Liam watched me with concern but remained silent. Try this. Juliet handed me a plate with a slice of peach pie on it. What do you think? The flavor was perfect, sweet but not cloying, with notes of lavender and honey. Honest flavor, no pretense. It's beautiful. She smiled, openly, genuinely. You know, sometimes you just have to let yourself start over, without looking back at the past. In the evening, I returned to an empty house. Megan had already taken her things away. The only things left were the empty shelves in her closet and the faint smell of her perfume. There was a note on the kitchen table. The kids are staying at Mom's until tomorrow. I hope you realize they need time with both parents. I crumpled the note, tossed it in the trash can. I went upstairs, walked into the bedroom. It seemed huge and empty now. Our wedding picture was still on the nightstand. Why hadn't she taken it? My phone vibrated. A message from Juliet. Don't forget about the tasting tomorrow. I made something special. I smiled. There was more warmth and care in that message than in all the civilized conversations I'd had with Megan. At 2 a.m, I went down to the kitchen, pulling out the papers for the contest. Maybe Liam was right. Maybe I do need something of my own. Something no one could take away from me? Scarlett's drawing of the family holding hands still hung on the fridge. An old drawing from a life when everything was simple and straightforward. I pulled out my phone, opened a text message from Megan. We need to discuss a schedule for seeing the kids. Let's do it in a civilized way. Civilized. That word didn't hurt anymore, just tiredness. And the sudden relief of realizing I don't have to pretend anymore. I don't have to play the open relationship game. No need to. I started filling out the entry form for the contest, line by line, word by word, like a recipe for a new dish, like the beginning of a new life. No pretending, no acting, just an honest life, like an honest taste of peach pie with lavender. That morning, I woke up to silence. Not the sound of the alarm clock, not the sound of the water in the bathtub, not the clacking of heels on the stairs, just silence. The sun was already rising over Malibu, coloring the sky a soft pink. Earlier at this time, Megan was usually doing yoga in the living room, and I was making breakfast. The kitchen smelled like coffee. I had forgotten to turn off the coffee machine last night. Little missteps started to happen more often. Forgotten lights, dishes not put away, unchecked homework. Life splintered into details, and some got lost along the way. Dad? Ashton appeared in the kitchen, still wearing the same superhero t-shirt. You were up? Working on a contest entry. I started pulling out pans. Do you want an omelet? And pancakes? Like before? Like before. I froze at the stove, remembering our Saturday breakfasts. Megan whipping up the batter, the kids arguing over toppings, me frying the pancakes one by one. Sure, son. Will you help? We cooked together. I showed him how to flip a pancake properly, how to determine the right temperature, how to make the batter the perfect consistency. Ashton was smiling, for the first time in a long time. Scarlett came down to breakfast dressed in her school uniform. In her hands was the same old yearbook, but today there was a butterfly sticker on the cover. A little sign of change. "Daddy, can I not go to Mommy's today? I have an idea for a drawing and I want to..." "Honey, we had a deal. 2 days with Mommy, 5 days with me. But she keeps talking about Uncle Braxton, and Grandma too, and I don't want to listen." I sat down next to her and put my arm around her shoulders. "I know, Princess, but she's still your mom, and she loves you. And us? Us she loves? Together?" I didn't know what to answer. How do I explain to a child that sometimes love goes away, that sometimes people choose personal growth over family? I showed up at the restaurant earlier than usual. The kitchen greeted me with familiar smells and sounds, the clinking of dishes, the hiss of the coffee machine, the soft greetings of the staff. "You look better." Audrey handed me a cup of coffee. "Anything different?" I applied for a contest. "The one in San Francisco?" I nodded, pulling out a list of orders for the day. "Liam's right. I need something of my own." "Good morning." Juliet entered the kitchen carrying a basket of fresh herbs. Her enthusiasm was infectious. We spent the morning experimenting with sauces, discussing new recipes, planning the menu. For the first time in a long time, I felt alive. My phone vibrated, a message from Megan. "We need to talk, in person." I looked at the screen, feeling my throat constrict. Her messages used to make my heart start beating faster. Now they only caused anxiety. "Everything okay?" Juliet noticed my condition. "Yeah, it's just... Megan wants to talk." "And you're ready?" "No, but I'll have to." She touched my hand, lightly, fleetingly. You know, sometimes the hardest part is saying no. Especially to those we've loved. Loved. The past tense didn't cut it anymore. We met at a coffee shop, the same one where I'd once proposed to her. Megan looked flawless. New haircut, expensive suit, pearl earrings from Braxton. "Thanks for coming." She sat across from me, placing her phone on the table with the screen up. "I wanted to discuss our future." "Our?" "You know what I mean. About an open relationship. About the possibility of keeping the family together, but also..." "No." The word came out on its own, calm and firm. "What?" "No, Megan. I don't want an open relationship. I don't want to pretend everything's okay when you're dating another man. I don't want to explain to the kids why their mother..." "Leave the kids out of this," she grumbled. "They'll understand. In time. Like Ashton. Who's afraid to go to school because everyone knows about you and Braxton? Or like Scarlett, who stopped drawing with colored pencils. You're being dramatic." "No, Megan. I'm just... seeing." Her phone vibrated, a message from Braxton. I recognized the tune. She didn't pick up, but her fingers trembled. "You've changed." I said it without bitterness, just stating a fact. "And that's okay. People change. But I don't want to be part of that change. Not like this." "So you're choosing divorce?" "No, Megan. You chose that. When you started dating Braxton. When you decided that your personal growth was more important than your family. I just... accept your choice." She was silent, staring into her untouched coffee, then pulled an envelope out of her purse. "Here are the papers. My lawyer has everything prepared. I hope we can resolve everything." "Civilized?" I smiled. The word no longer hurt. "Yes, for the sake of the children." I took the envelope without opening it, standing up from the table. "Goodbye, Megan. You're not even going to look at the paperwork?" "Later. Right now I have a tasting at the restaurant. New menu." She looked surprised. I used to drop everything for her. Before. Juliet was waiting for me at the restaurant with a new dessert. Pear tart with caramel and sea salt. Simple recipe. Honest flavor. "How was it?" She held out a fork to me. I said no. "And how did it feel?" "Weird." I tasted the dessert. "But just right. Like your tart. Everything in its place." She smiled. Openly. Genuinely. The kitchen smelled like caramel and fresh baked goods, and the sun was setting outside the window, coloring the Malibu sky orange. The phone vibrated a message from Ashton. Dad, can Scarlett and I come home tonight? We don't want to go to Grandma's. I looked at Juliet. Can you help me make dinner for 3? The kids are coming home. I'd love to. She started pulling out groceries. I have an idea for an amazing chocolate fondue. That evening we sat in the kitchen, me, the kids, and the leftover fondue. Scarlett was drawing, with colored pencils, all the colors of the rainbow. Ashton talked about school without hiding his eyes. Outside the window, the ocean rumbled, as it always did, as it had before. The phone vibrated. A confirmation notice for the San Francisco pageant. A new chapter, a new story.